Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. I am your host, Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he's a rebel on the streets, but an assassin in the sheets. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
That's right. I'm going to leave you on a park bench, baby.
Oh, man. I just got really emotional there. I know you were joking, but damn, I just got really emotional.
Yeah, I went about as dark as I could go.
Yeah, these 3 episodes of Andor really just fucked with my head a little bit there. That's what I was not expecting to have that emotional reaction to you making a funny joke.
Oh, good.
Well, Jesus,
that tells you something about the quality of this television program.
I think it does. All right, folks. This week on the show, we were supposed to once again be doing our Paul Thomas Anderson Deconstructing Director series with his first movie, Heart 8. As you can see from the title of the show that you're listening to, we're not doing that. We just couldn't stop talking about Andor.
And we didn't want to.
Stop. Yeah, you're right. We didn't want to. And I think we had kind of talked about at the beginning of this whole thing how it would be fun to revisit Rogue One, a movie that I think it's fair to say we're both pretty mixed on, or at least were both pretty mixed on prior to this television show coming out. And we thought, okay, now we've learned the backstory of Cassian Andor and some other characters that appear in this movie. Let's watch it again and see if our opinion changes. And so that's what we decided to do for this week's episode.
That's right. So again, first we're going to talk about the remaining 3 episodes of Andor. Then we're going to segue smoothly into talking about Rogue One.
Yeah, it's almost as if we're going to just literally just hand the baton from one moment to the other, as one seamlessly fades into the other.
Yeah. So spoilers for an hour from now. When Rogue One ended, I booted up A New Hope because I was like, let's just keep it rolling. Then I kind of eventually petered out.
Yeah, just a final warning for you folks. We are changing up how we do things. Normally, the movie or television show that is on the title is the first thing we're talking about. This week, we're talking about Andor first. So if for some stupid reason you haven't watched Andor yet and you want to listen to us talk about Rogue One, don't do that. Just go watch Andor. It's better than our podcast. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
Yeah.
But if for some reason you insist, just find the timestamp for when we talk about Rogue One and enjoy that conversation, as I know I will.
Me too.
I haven't had it yet, but I'm just assuming.
I think it's a safe assumption.
All right, Matt. Let's begin with the end of Andor, the final 3 episodes that came out this week. I believe they were titled Make It Stop, Who Else Knows, and Jedha, Kyber, Urso. Matt, what'd you think?
It was a good finale. I think it's safe to say that expectations for a finale of anything are high. And if you've really, really enjoyed the thing that you're watching, then the expectations are, I almost want to say, impossible. But I think this show lived up to my expectations.
Yeah,
I was either wrong or right only in a technical sense on a lot of my predictions about how things were gonna end up. I mean, one example would be Luthen is killed by the rebellion is one of my guesses, and I was technically correct in this, but not really, not in spirit of how I meant it, right? So they didn't do some of the things I thought they would, but I think some of the things they did, but in a different way. For example, I was thinking Dedra is going to be important in how things fall out, and I turned out to be right. I just expected it to be something more like she would have a change of heart, and it just turned out to be her being such a little conniving monster actually was the reason why the Death Star information got out. So it's again, that one I'm more inclined to give myself credit for, because the idea of a through line going through Dedra was actually correct. But anyway, I loved it. I thought the final moments of the last episode just totally got me. Everything worked on me. The whole last episode is really great. I mean, 3 great episodes. I loved it. What do you think?
Yeah, I liked it a whole lot. I agree with you. The final moments of the final episode when Cassian gets on his clothes that he's wearing in Rogue One.
Yeah.
Even though I had not seen Rogue One in a long time, I still like immediately recognized that outfit, and I was like, oh my god, it's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because I didn't remember so much of Rogue One that like I didn't see very clearly the fact that they're talking about Kafrene and we're dropping the name Urso, and like we're doing all the stuff that is directly leading this show ends similar to the way the movie ends with Cassian heading towards Kafrene, which is where we meet him in Rogue One.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was quite because it'd been a while since I've seen that movie. But anyway, really like these episodes. I think kind of the most surprising thing to me is in line of what you're talking about. I think a lot of the things that happen in these final 3 episodes are just like, it's not that I quote unquote expected them to happen, but things just kind of played out like the way they were going to. Like in retrospect, like we're trying to game the show and be like, okay, what big like twists or last minute changes or conflicts are they going to throw our way in the final 3 episodes of the show? And the answer is, well, none really. Like
right.
Luthen dies the way he always figured he was going to die. I think the Dedra stuff could be a little surprising. Again, but only based on expectations. I think when you look at it, it's like, oh, of course, like this is what the Empire does. Like this is what fascism does. It's like it destroys everyone, including the people most loyal to it. And we see the like all the characters that were most loyal to the Empire are absolutely swallowed up and destroyed by it at the end of the show.
Yep.
And then Cassian just like it becomes who we always knew he was going to become. And so like that's what happens in these episodes, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's like it was always going to end that way. But yet I had convinced myself that there was going to be like some moment or something that happened in these episodes that was going to shock me or surprise me. I just think I overthought it. This is just it's very good. These episodes are very good, but they're just like the end of the show in a way that was always going to end.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I'll just say like these were some of my favorite, 24 episodes of television of all time, considering the entire show end to end. These last 3, probably none of these last 3 episodes are among, my top favorites of the show.
Yeah.
And that's, they basically, like I said, basically met my expectations. It was interesting because I heard going into it, people saying like, oh, this is like the best stuff in the season. And I'm honestly like, I mean, okay, they're probably talking about Clea doing a Jason Bourne in the hospital.
Uh-huh.
And they're probably talking about like how the way Luthen went out overall. Like I thought that was great. They may be talking about K2SO storming the apartment building, which was like fun, but that's not really what I go to Andor for. So, I'm happy for you if you love that, but that's not my favorite thing. But it was cool. Anyway, like I thought this was, we can talk about these 3 episodes in particular, but I think also we're going to talk about the whole show.
Yeah.
Because now we know how it all ties together. And, I think several times as we were talking about the prior episodes, we would say something like, I won't really know until the show ends when it comes to like, what are we doing with this character, or what, how am I going to feel about this? And I think everything landed, all the characters wrapped up. I think maybe in some cases I thought we were going to do more with something and we didn't. And then I'm just fine with that. Actually, like for example, specific thing was Saw Gerrera, where I thought there was going to be like a punctuation on that before we move into Rogue One. Now, this is premature Rogue One talk for a second, but then when I watched Rogue One, I was like, oh, somehow they like made a whole TV show so that the culmination of his arc actually happens in Rogue One.
Yeah. I mean, like I think Tony Gilroy, the creator of the show, has very much described it as like a show that is essentially a baton pass. That is like we are creating this whole thing and then moving our pieces, and everything's made to where this show just hands off and concludes everything in the next movie, which is an interesting thing to do. and I say that not to say that like we don't get any kind of definitive conclusions here. I do think we do. I think one thing you said, like the way we talked about the show earlier, is like, oh, we got to see the final 3 episodes before we like figure out what the show is doing. I think in retrospect, like I think by the end of episode 9, maybe even earlier, we kind of have a very clear image on who every character is and what the show is doing with them. Like there's no like sudden choice or twist that recontextualizes a character. Like everyone is just behaving consistently, like and we know who they are and we understand their choices and all of that. So, which again, that's not a criticism, but it's just like I think I built up in my head what I thought the great contextual reveal of the final 3 episodes were going to be, and it's not that. They're still very good episodes, but it's not that.
And I'm kind of glad. So like one example, probably another topic that I would say that about would be I'd be like, I don't really know what we're doing with Luthen exactly. I mean, I think I know what we're doing with Luthen, but we don't really know because, and in the back of my mind, I was always like, maybe we'll just learn some shocking piece of information about Luthen that just recontextualizes everything, and that's just not what this show was doing. Luthen, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, okay, he was a soldier. He had a crisis of conscience. He saves Clea and deserts, runs away. But he is the Luthen that we know, and he like he says, you fight to win. You don't just lash out. And so he starts building everything up, and that's it. Like there's no surprise there, I guess. The only surprise really is that Clea was some kid that he rescued, and if anything, that's more of a reveal about Clea than it is about Luthen.
Yeah, I mean, like episode 10 is I guess the Luthen episode. It's his death episode. We get his flashback, but I think he basically stabs himself and hands off the episode to Clea, and it's her episode for the rest of it. And it's a very good episode. I really liked Make It Stop a whole lot. Maybe my favorite of the last 3. I haven't thought about that too much, but I really enjoyed it. I did like Clea's Jason Bourne walking through the hospital. I thought that was really great and exciting, tense stuff. And I loved it intermixed with the whole like opening 20 minutes of the episode is just like really great shit. That's like his meeting with what's his name, the guy who he murders on the park bench. What is his name?
Well, Lonnie is his first name, and that's what I remember him by.
Okay.
Which is a normal name, actually. So
I love that whole scene because like the second you get there, like I'm just like, oh, Luthen's gonna kill him. Like, and then like when he mentions Yavin, I was like, oh, he's definitely gonna kill him. Then like he's not gonna tell him about Yavin if he was actually gonna take him there ever. That's not happening. He's dead. This guy's dead.
That's interesting. I didn't think that, and I was like kind of horrified that he did kill Lonnie. Like horrified, but not surprised, right? Because you're like, okay, this scans with the Luthen that we know. It just seems like the darkest thing we've seen him do is like this guy is. I think even Luthen would say with a straight face, like Lonnie is one of the greatest heroes of the rebellion. He lived a double life and passed us this critical information for years and years. And where would we be without Lonnie? And then he kills him just to like minimize the risk of getting this information out.
And to be clear, they're burned already, right? So like doing this does not stop like the Empire from figuring out it's Lonnie, capturing him and torturing him to point to Luthen. Like we know that's already over. Like Dedra knows it's him, and so the death was essentially pointless and sad. But like, I mean, that's just Luthen. He's not going to take the risk. He's going to even a small amount of risk is enough. What was the line he said at the beginning that I thought like when he says he's going to go meet with him, and Clea is like, no, don't do that. Like this, and if it's not perfect, get out of there. He says like, I think we've used up all the perfect or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I loved that line. I love that line as this perfect kind of window into Luthen's head that like he knows it's kind of over.
Yeah,
already. Like they're gonna get this one piece of information, and then they're gonna burn everything down. And it's not even clear to me if he like I think when he sends Clea forward and says he's gonna be the one to do the burn, I feel like on some level he knows that everything's closing in already, and he's sending her to safety and taking the risk upon himself.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to remember why exactly I think that, but it's just like the rebels have gotten so overt. The ISB is. I'm trying to remember if there was like some moment that made us think that the ISB was more aware of Luthen than. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I like the structural thing the episode does that I've never quite seen it done this way, where when they're standing in the hallway, right after that moment that you just mentioned, he says to her, he just says, "Move," and then she has this confusing expression on her face where she reacts as if he just said something really poignant and emotional, and he kind of gives like a small sad smile, and then only after they've like shared that moment does she actually walk away. And then later in the episode, you see the moment when he's talking to her as a child, and he says to her, like, we prepare. I don't remember what he says exactly, but it's like, we prepare, we wait for our moment, and then when I say move, you move.
Yeah.
And then the moment from earlier makes sense, and I just thought that was really cool.
No, it was really great. I also there's a weird thing the episode does, and tell me if I'm wrong here. We're doing this kind of interesting echoing thing with Clea and Dedra. I think like at one point Clea puts her hair up as she's like in the middle of prepping to go into this hospital and kill Luthen. Like she puts her hair up in a really, really tight bun that is very similar to Dedra's look. And I wonder if we're doing this like, I mean, both of them are orphans, right? That were raised by the belief system that they ended up like worshiping at the feet of, essentially. So I think there's a lot of similarities between those two characters, in that at least.
Yeah. I think you're right. I'm not sure.
I don't know what else to do with it. That's why I just stopped talking. So.
Yeah. No, I didn't notice it, so I haven't really thought about it. But I do think you're right. Like they're kind of the two core, main characters of that episode. Like you said, Luthen is in the beginning part, and then he's kind of out of it, and then really past that point, it's Dedra and Clea, dueling basically. Like Cassian. I don't even know if Cassian's in that episode.
He's not in the episode at all. He's not.
Yeah. So there is, I think you're right. I think there is a mirroring. It's like, I think maybe it's as simple as like the idea is we're pitting these two against each other. It's a head-to-head battle of wits between the super spy and the super, anti-espionage, agent. And
yeah.
It doesn't quite play out that way though, because Dedra is immediately arrested as soon as she, does anything. But regardless, I don't know. It's just a cool episode of TV. It's the most Born Identity episode in a show with a lot of Born episodes.
So I have a question about this, because I like immediately was like, oh, she's going to the hospital to finish the job that he started, that she's going to kill him. Do you think the show wants you to have some level of uncertainty of, is she going into the hospital to get him out of there and save him or kill him? I'm uncertain on what the show wanted me to think, because I immediately just went like, okay, she's going in there to kill him. That's what she's doing.
I was pretty sure she was going in there to kill him. Yeah.
Okay.
I did have the thought. So interesting point though, because I didn't really have much doubt she was going to go in there to kill him, but there's a little note in my mind whenever I'm watching the show where I'm thinking, how do I contextualize this for my kids when I watch it with them? which I wasn't watching with them, because I was thinking like, this is something you and I were joking together earlier, but I was like, season 1 had a few moments of sort of, moral grayness where it's like, the kids are shocked that Cassian just shot this guy in season 1, and you're like, okay, look, he was gonna rob them. Cassian had to do it. not great, but he's a morally great protagonist. But this episode we're talking about is like try to explain to an 8-year-old why Luthen had to kill Lonnie and leave him dead on the park bench. It's like, well, try to explain why Cleo was so desperate to go into that hospital, not to save her mentor and father figure, but to make sure he was dead. These are just very dark things, but that's what this show is, right?
Yeah,
very much more so, I would say, in the second season. There's a lot more stuff in the second season where I'm just like, I don't know if my kids need to watch this now. But
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. My kids are too young to even consider doing that, so I don't have to deal with that calculus until several years from now. But I think I agree with you. The show is diving much more into the gray of a lot of this with these characters this time around. Than I mean, it was always there in the first season, but I think you're right. You're definitely right. It's much more prevalent this time around.
Yeah,
and much more subtext and much more uncertainty on how you're supposed to feel about things at any given moment.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the first season is. It has a pretty straightforward arc to it, which is like we're taking Cassian Andor, who hates the Empire as much as anybody in the galaxy, but feels totally powerless to do anything about that, and just carries this simmering resentment. And he is gradually, over the course of that entire season, put through a series of experiences that shape him and galvanize him and inspire him till that last moment where. Which is like the best writing ever, where he says, "Kill me or take me in." It's like I'm all in. This is all I can do with my life now.
Yeah,
and that's beautiful, clear, straightforward. The second season, for all that we love it, it's in some ways, because it sacrificed that clarity, it becomes this thing where I think a lot of people, especially when the first episodes were coming out, there was a bit of a like, I don't quite even know what to do with this yet. I'm not really sure where we're going. I'm not really sure what journey we're setting upon, because Cassian seems to have completed his season 1 arc. What is Cassian's season 2 arc? And that's a lot less clear. And I kind of think that's okay, because I think like Cyril's season 2 arc is very clear. Daedra's season 2 arc is very clear. I think it's fine that Cassian is less central. Bix has a lot more of the spotlight this season. So there's plenty going on. It's just not all kind of tied up in Cassian.
It is very true that this is a show named after this character, and like we said, he's not in this episode at all, and he is definitely like, I would call this an ensemble television show that like we are talking about all these characters and care about all these characters, and he's just one small part of that. And I wonder, like, do you think part of that is just like he has a fixed end point, and so like there's not too much we can mess with him, because we already know his end point, and we have all these other characters who we don't necessarily know, and so we just like feel, when you're writing it, you just feel the freedom of messing with those characters more.
I think so. I mean, I think this was the smart thing to do. Like, I think if you're given 2 seasons to do this in, I think we would have all collectively been super annoyed if season 1 ended without us getting Cassian to the point where he is a diehard rebel. Like that. Sure. That was the way to end season 1. But then you say, okay, then what do we do with season 2? And the answer is, well, now we play, like you just said, we play with all these other characters that we've set up. Where, like we just said a minute ago, we didn't really know how Daedra was going to end up. Her ending up in a classic Empire jail cell was not actually something I saw coming, although works perfectly. It's so beautiful. Cyril was kind of, to me, my favorite thing about season 2, because
I mean, I think like the reason why these last 3 episodes are not my favorite episodes of Andor is because we've moved on from Cyril, and like I agree with you. Like, Cyril's arc and his ultimate tragic fate is the best part of the show. So shockingly, it just is.
Yeah, it's funny that so obviously the 3 years, they do break up into contained stories quite nicely, but
yeah,
I have a harder time separating them out. The first season, it was very much just like the prison one, but this one, it's like, okay, well, there's the wedding on Chandrillan, which is, I guess, the first.
That was the first set, yeah.
First set. But there's also in parallel stuff going on the farming planet, and also in parallel, Cassian is dealing with disorganized rebels on Yavin. So like this is why it's harder to talk about these things concretely, because they're kind of woven together.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it feels a lot more like, I guess just like you said, serial ensemble storytelling, where you've got to follow all these storylines, even though they're not really necessarily connecting at this moment, and you're not even necessarily sure when they're going to. Then the Gorman stuff basically goes. Gorman is basically 6 episodes. It's just basically the beginning of the Gorman arc and then the ending of the Gorman arc. And then finally, the final 3 are what we just talked about, the idea of
yeah.
Basically Luthen's ending and Clea and all that stuff. I'm just sketching this out because I've never quite even sat down and done the exercise of been like, okay, what exactly happens when in season 2?
Yeah.
Because some of my favorite season 2 stuff, by the way, was like the Chandrillan wedding, which feels like a whole different universe than like Luthen stabbing himself with the dagger. But
I love how like it almost feels like that's just a totally different world.
Yeah.
Now, like the world in which a bunch of people are going to get together and just do this lavish, over the top wedding, and the world we're in at the end of the show just don't belong together. I think a perfect kind of symbol of this is the safe house that Bix and Cassian were living in at the very beginning of the season. By the end of the season, that hallway is decrepit and run down. The safe house is run down, and like this was a place where Bix and Cassian for a moment thought, hey, maybe we could like start to make a life here. Like we've been hiding out here for a while, but maybe there's a chance we could like settle down a little bit and make a life here. And just the perfect symbol of when we return to this place at the very end of the show, it is in bad shape. It is essentially destroyed, and then ultimately is destroyed. Great symbol. Really, 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 really good stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like there was some subtle, set design choices just overall to make it seem like everything has become shittier under the Empire.
Yeah.
I mean, not just that building, but I feel like the way it's not, I guess it is the Empire in the beginning of the show, but like just the way the world is depicted, it shifts a bit over the course of the show.
It's darker. There's less beauty. Even like Coruscant, I think like we just see more imperial, sharp edged looking structures and less of the beauty of the world. I think that's very intentional. Yeah.
There's one shot, by the way, I just wanted to call this out. It's just cool. And it's a simple shot of like Daedra walking toward the ISB building down that kind of promenade that is in front of the ISB building where, we've seen a few scenes happen there. And it's just the camera is just like pointing at the ISB building, and you see just like a wall of windows like you would see on a normal building, like any normal building where you see kind of the design where like just walls of glass, right?
Yeah.
And you see the reflection in those glass panes, and it's sort of the like imperfect Ripley reflection that you would actually see in real life, but the reflection is like a ridiculous science fiction super building. But that building is not in the shot, so it's just I just love that, because like normally an effects shot is an effects shot, or like I don't know, it just struck me as being a very subtle, cool, like, how do we make this feel real in this moment? It's like these are just people walking in a scene. It doesn't even feel particularly sci-fi, but then you see this distorted reflection in these panes of glass, and it's a Coruscant building, and you're obviously on Coruscant. I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, no, I like that. So, Matt, what is Andor saying at the end of the day? So we talked about how in retrospect, we kind of knew what the show was saying maybe a little bit earlier than we thought, but let's finally conclude on it, because I think I will say one interesting thing that these 3 episodes, Luthen dies in them, but Luthen is a presence in all of them, including the very end when Cassian is on Yavin making the argument that Luthen died for this intel, and we've got to chase it down and figure out what's going on here. And nobody seems willing to do that. Nobody wants to trust Luthen. Nobody wants to believe in it. Nobody wants to act on it. And there's this real fight that Cassian is spearheading. This idea that none of this would exist without him. The rebellion would not exist. The alliance would not exist. Like Yavin would not exist. He created all of this. He started all of this. And I think ultimately what that says is one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago was this idea that the subterfuge, the spying, the lying, the killing, the betrayals, the worst, darkest, ugliest part of Luthen's rebellion were necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so. Right. I mean, I that's one of those things where we needed to see the whole thing to know for sure. But I just agree with you. The Luthen, there's certainly no moment, where it's like, actually, Luthen, your whole approach was wrong the whole time, and the Rebel Alliance would have been formed without you and your approach.
Yeah.
On the contrary, everyone basically acknowledges, even as simple as like, or we talked a bit about the idea that Mon Mothma represents sort of the face of the rebellion, the idea of hope and inspiration in contrast to Luthen's ruthlessness. It's like, and the show is very clear, like even Mon Mothma doesn't get off Coruscant without Luthen, making sure she does. Killing people to get her off Coruscant.
Yep.
It's not pretty. It's violent and ruthless and heartless, and it's just like his speech in season 1. I think his speech in season 1 was just telling us the character thesis statement there, and since then it's not like things have changed for him. I think the only thing that really we saw change in season 1 is that he really, I think they kind of shift the makeup a bit to make him look like older, more rundown.
Yeah.
I mean, technically he is older because humans age, but like I think they make him look older and more like just world weary. And I think by the episode in which he dies, I think he's part of the reason he lets himself die is because I think you're right that he knows this game is kind of played out. But I think the other reason is he's just exhausted of doing this. I think it's destroyed his soul, and he knows it.
Well, yeah. I mean, like whether he's burned by the Empire or not, like he just knows and has always known that he was fighting for a world that he wasn't going to get to live in. Right. That was part of that speech in the first season. That's been kind of the whole through line of this whole show, which is it's a very clever through line to build this show around, because we know that our main character is also in that calculation, right? Yeah. Like Cassian Andor is also going to give his life for a world that he would never get to see. Like he's willing to sacrifice everything for that world, even though he's not going to live in it. And like, I just think Luthen, like, he knows his role in this whole thing is kind of over now. Like he's passed it, like that phrase, passing the torch. I think I heard Tony Gilroy talk about this in an interview, which is why it keeps coming up my head. Like the idea that everything in the show is like torches being passed from one place to the other. This show is passing the torch to Rogue One, but also we see the characters pass the torch on, that like Luthen built this thing. He created this thing. And he sold his soul to do it. And now it's time for the leaders of the rebellion to take it on. It's time for Mon Mothma, and he has no place in that. Like I think that's a really interesting place where like one thing we do see in these 3 episodes is Clea kind of trying to wrestle with herself of like, what do I do now? Where do I go? Do I go to do I go to Yavin? Like, those people hate Luthen, and I am of Luthen. Do I have a place in that? And ultimately, I think she finds that she does.
Yeah.
But I really love that kind of questioning and dynamic of like, you needed us to do these bad things. Everyone needed this from us. And then ultimately we have to be thrown out with the trash once we've moved on beyond that and it's become something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought tell me if you disagree, but I thought like Clea and Vel had sort of maybe had a little moment back at that Chandrilan wedding, which nothing ever happened there. And then the fact that they kind of end up meeting up again on Yavin, I think is meant to give us a perfect way to close things where it's not telling you like, yeah, they're together now, but it's like, and now they have met up and anything could happen. Roll credits, you know. I'd like that.
Yeah.
I like
well,
that
I mean,
idea.
One way or another, it gives her some semblance or some image, or maybe just gives us some clear image of like what life could be for her.
Yeah.
Because that's the Clea just doesn't know what life is now. And like, I mean, I love this because I think Luthen would say, if like when Clea's, if Luthen was there when Clea's sitting there trying to figure out what her life is now, he would not be like, no, I was I was giving my life. I was dying. I was working to create a world that I wouldn't get to live in. I was working to create it for you.
Right.
So you have to find a place in this world. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're destroyed, and you too have done despicable things in the name of peace and prosperity and freedom. But you have to find a way to live in this world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I like that.
Yeah.
I like I don't want to like prematurely start talking about Rogue One, but I do feel sort of pulled to say certain things about how this connects to the rest of the franchise. So maybe we can do a rolling start into Rogue One talk.
Sure. Let's do it.
I was just thinking about the fact that there's this show does actually create, I think, what is a really powerful narrative through line that goes, you know, starts at the beginning of this show and goes into the original trilogy. And so I'll just specifically say what I mean is like there's, and this relates to what I said last week about like knock-on effects of actions and like the sequence of sacrifice and the buildup of sacrifice is accumulating, and the buildup of consequences accumulating, where it's like, you know, you take Cyril Karn, this character who, you know, most of what he did in his life was unwittingly a bad thing, ultimately, but he does this one thing which is sort of noble, but not even in the way he intends it, which is he stops Cassian from killing someone who he cares about. And then because he did that, she, you know, through her own sort of self-destructive, evil destroys itself nature, led to the Death Star plans being released via Lonnie. And Lonnie himself is sacrificed to make sure the Death Star plans. So there's another sacrifice for you. You've got, you know, Cyril and Lonnie, who gives the information to Luthen, who sacrifices himself to make sure that it gets to Clea, who doesn't sacrifice herself, but she passes it along to Cassian, who passes it along to Jyn Erso, who, you know, they go and they get the Death Star plans, and they pass those Death Star plans along to that little ship, and they die. There's a sacrifice, and then that little ship gets caught by Darth Vader and sends these dumb little droids down to a planet where a farm boy finds them. And it's very funny watching A New Hope, by the way, the scene where a movie I've watched so many times that I almost can't watch it because I have it memorized. I don't need to watch it. The scene where Luke is about to walk away from the Jawa trading ship without R2D2, and you're like, the plans, because that's what, like, especially after watching all of Andor and then Rogue One, and then starting A New Hope, you're like, that's what I care about. Like, that's the through line is these plans and the culmination of getting those Death Star plans where they need to go so Luke can blow up the Death Star. Like it manages to make it mean more, right? Like that's actually amazing. we always talked about like the prequels, you know, killed our childhoods and ruined Star Wars. It's like this actually makes it mean more. That's remarkable to me, and I don't know if I've like fully processed how cool that is. You know.
So, in the interest of talking about Rogue One, I think this is really fascinating because, like, I think both Andor and Rogue One, in my estimation, are like conceptually stupid ideas. like no one was watching Star Wars and said, "Hey, I wonder how they got those plans." Who cares?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. And I think it's really interesting because this is kind of an exercise of like, okay, but like, does conception matter in a story, or is it all execution, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's like Andor is a show that I think the first time I heard it was being made, I was like, are you kidding me? You took a character from a movie that didn't need to exist, and now you're going to make a television show about his backstory as if we fucking cared at all? What a stupid idea. What a dumb idea. But then, of course, they make it sharp and entertaining and insightful and all the wonderful things we've said about Andor. And it's just like, oh, I've stopped caring that conceptually it's a dumb idea. And I think Rogue One I don't think it's good enough for me to get over my conception of like, this is kind of stupid, isn't it? But I will say, like, I broadly agree with you that a cool thing watching the show is it made me care a lot more about Rogue One than I thought I would. Like, I think it is just, we can just kind of start the conversation here. I think it is just true that I like this movie more than I did when I first saw it, because I have context for not just Cassian Andor, but for Mon Mothma and for that one friend whose name I forgot that you were talking about before we started recording.
Melshi, yeah.
There we go. And even Saw a little bit.
Yeah. K2SO, the stupid droid who I didn't care about at all and didn't even really think was effective comic relief. And this time, man, I was breaking down when K2SO died. I never cared about K2SO before. I never cared about Melshi for that, man. I was like, why am I supposed to know this character's name? And now I'm like, no, Melshi. You know, and Mon Mothma, like you just said, Mon Mothma is like barely in it. You're like, why even bother? And it's like, oh my God, there she is.
Look, she's like, we get to see her in her full capacity as leader of the rebellion. Mm-hmm. And then it not only that, but like when she makes the choice in Rogue One to like be like, to kind of push back against the rest of the council a little bit, and like, no, I think we really do need to act here. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, oh, that's in line with the woman we met in Andor. That like she like feels hamstrung by the system in which she operates, but she really has a strong sense of morality and what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's there are actually so that was one thing I wanted to talk about, is like, it made me successfully care about characters that I didn't care about, like several that we just listed. Thus, I care when things happen to them in the movie, because the movie didn't actually make me care about them on its own. Which, interestingly, I think frees up, like, somehow frees up space for me to care about the other characters, like the two Jedha defender guys, whose names I admit I still can't remember, but like
their names are the blind one and the one with the big guns.
Right. Like, I still don't care a lot about them, but I think it's basically like, because they're not like peppering you with new characters and you're just like, I don't care about any of these people. Yeah. Watching the movie this time, I was like, oh, there's like a bunch of characters that I know and care about, and then there's these two new guys. Yeah. And that felt like something I could metabolize.
Can I tell you the big problem with this movie, though?
Yeah.
None of these characters are the lead of the movie.
Yeah.
The lead of the movie is Jyn Erso, who sucks.
Yeah. So we were talking about Jyn Erso earlier. I think like my take on Jyn Erso is simply like what her arc is in this movie is just a vastly inferior version of what Andor's arc in season 1 is.
Yeah.
Yeah. By which I mean Cassian's arc, which is like disillusioned former, person who hates the Empire, former rebel, badass, operative, who is re-inspired to fight for the rebellion.
Yeah. I just don't buy it, man. I like Felicity Jones as a performer. I'm not saying like she's doing a bad job in this movie, but I just never emotionally bought her journey over the course of this movie. Like it feels like very, very quickly to sitting in the council room giving inspirational speeches about rebellions being built on hope. Like it's like it just happens so fast, and I just didn't buy it, and I just don't think her character works. And I mean, there's like a reason why we didn't say, who we need to learn more about, Jyn Erso.
So the problem is the show is just way too the movie, I mean, is just way too fast and doesn't let anything breathe and doesn't set anything up. The way
it's not a television show like that. I mean, like that. This like I was shocked at going from watching Andor to watching this movie. It's like, oh, like that's TV pacing and that's movie pacing. It's just like the movie is screaming forward. We're, like even like the first 15 minutes, we're like jumping from planet to planet like every 2 minutes. And it's just overwhelming.
Right. I do think, I was thinking about Aliens, the best movie ever.
Of course. Yeah.
And how Aliens manages to introduce you to all these Marines, and they get just like a handful of lines of dialogue. Some of them get no lines of dialogue, but they still get a characterization with like a thing they wear. Right.
Yeah.
And you kind of like know them. You don't necessarily care about all of them. Some of them you care about quite a lot. You care about Vasquez and Hudson quite a lot by the end. They get a lot more dialogue, I admit. But the point I'm making here is you can do the thing where you throw a bunch of characters at me and you just subtly characterize them in the background, and you give me a sense of where, like, who are they when they start out? Hudson's a coward. He becomes brave. There's an arc there. It's in the background. It's not in your face. That's fine. It works perfectly for what it is. That we don't get that with any of these characters, really. There's no even implication of arc in many cases. Like one thing we're missing with Jyn is like, what is like, we learn information about her all out of order.
Yeah.
Where like, I think on paper, the idea is supposed to be that like, when she sees the hologram from her father and she realizes that her father's not actually this like imperial scientist who is a villain, basically, she realizes he actually loves her and has been sacrificing and is a rebel just like her. I think that is meant to be some kind of inflection point for her character where she just totally changes her tune on everything after that moment.
Yeah. She basically just says, "Oh, Daddy wants me to be a rebel, so I'm going to do it now."
And that would like that might have even worked if we felt in that moment like, oh, the character dynamics that are happening under the surface with this character is that she feels deeply wounded by her father's betrayal, and learning that he didn't actually betray her would be a huge thing for her. That's not in the movie.
No,
there's a lot of stuff that's not in the movie that is in Andor now, but not in this movie, and thus you're just kind of that's one of the ways in which Andor makes this show better. Is it situates like Saw Gerrera as like a character where you understand where he's coming from and who he is, and even his death for me felt a little bit poignant. Whereas the first time I saw it, I was just like, I don't understand anything we're doing with this character. I have no idea who this guy is. I vaguely have some knowledge that he's meant to be part of like the cartoons.
I feel this so much when I'm watching Star Wars stuff, is this general feeling I get where like, it seems like the movie expects me to know who this person is already. The same thing, by the way, happened in the prequels. in episode 3 when we meet General Grievous, and the movie's just like talking about how I should know who General Grievous is. And I'm just like, what the fuck? I have no idea who this weird robot is. What are you talking about? That's how I felt about Saw Gerrera. I felt the whole time like the movie is just like, I mean, you know him, right? Here he is. I'm like, no, he feels like he's in a completely different movie. What is he doing here? And so Andor, just by the nature of Andor laying a little bit of groundwork for who this guy is, you do, I think, understand him and his role in the movie a little bit more. And then like, his death becomes like a similar death to that of Luthen, where you like it was very stupid for me in the moment to see him be like, and now he's just like, all right, I'm just gonna die now. Okay. Because like it's this big emotional moment of where he's like, I'm done running. I'm done with this. I'm done. And like in a movie where he's been in it for 15 minutes and we don't know who he is, that's like the emotional weight of I'm done running doesn't really land.
Okay. Like, I guess don't then. But no, it's I believe he didn't even have like the robot legs the last time we saw him in Andor.
No, he didn't.
Which it gives us the sense of like, oh man, he's just all worn out. He's just used up and he's just ready to end it. And I totally agree that you just feel differently about that. Another minor, like so many minor things like this where like just the guy, I don't even know the character's name, the guy who's like the Yavin XO, where
he like the admiral. No, he's not the admiral. He's like the general. General Draven is his name.
Is it General Draven? Let me just look that up to make sure I'm talking about the same guy. I probably am, but the point is like, that's him. So like him and Andor butt heads repeatedly in season 2. And then that like tension carries over into Rogue One. But if you just watch Rogue One in isolation, you don't. There's no basis for this tension. You're just like, why would Cassian Andor have tension with this guy? It's just nothing. It's just like, well, we need there to be tension.
I also I forgot how much the characterization of Cassian Andor in Rogue One is like completely built off the back that he shoots that one guy after he talks to him in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And then we're supposed to take that, and that's supposed to be symbolic of every bad thing Cassian Andor has done in his entire life. And he's like this, like, because then we set him up as like he's going to be the assassin, right? He's gonna assassinate Galen Erso instead of save him. And I just like all that has much more weight to it now. That you understand that, and I think it's so great. It's very difficult to. I just remember feeling this the first time I watched the movie of like to understand the dynamics of Yavin and these people and why some of them seem to like each other less than others. It was just very difficult to parse that dynamic at the time, but it makes so much more sense now.
No, that's totally true. There's like all these arguments, like Mon Mothma's arguing with the other politicians, and in context of just that movie, you're like, who are all these people? Why are they arguing? Like, this is fake tension. This is totally fabricated tension just for there to be like a reason why they can't just immediately go to Scarif. Which is what we know they should do because we're the viewers. But given the context of Andor, you're like, oh yeah, these are those guys. These are those exact same characters who I just saw just disagreeing for more or less understandable reasons about because the Andor context is like they are not ready to go loud. They are still in this mode of basically being secretive and timid and thinking, okay, we need to build up our strength. We need to build up our network.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is the moment we have been building up for, is an attack. We need to attack. And yes, it's a risk. Yes, they're going to come, they're going to hit back against us. But why else have we been doing all of this all this time?
Yeah. I think that's completely true. And one thing that like, going into Rogue One, you and I and everyone else watching it knew the rebellion as like the rebellion we see in Star Wars, right? Like, and so it's this active, it's a war. It's an active civil war happening. Yeah. So we carry that information into that movie. And so like, I remember distinctly like one of the council members' lines when they find out that the Death Star is a thing is like, well, we might as well just surrender now. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you kidding me? I think it makes a lot more sense, yeah, when you have the backstory of understanding that like how slow and secretive and patient this force has been built up. And yeah, to your point, like the fact that it's not an active like army yet, really. Like they're building towards that. They're working towards that. They're working towards shifting over to open war. But they're not ready for that yet. They're not there yet. And yeah, suddenly the Death Star appears, and now we have to suddenly, faster than we thought to, shift into that frame of reference. And it's like shit. I mean, talking about Draven, like the order to send a squadron of X-wings to, I don't remember the names of the planets, the one that Galen Erso was on. That's like a big move in retrospect.
Yeah.
Because one thing the movie makes very clear is that no one in the rebellion is doing any like active warfare against the Empire except for Saw. And that's why there's this big break with Saw, is because he's like constantly in like active fighting with the Empire. And they're like, no, don't do that yet. Stop it.
Yeah. You wanted to, I'm going to tell you something that blew my mind.
Okay.
And this is the first 2 paragraphs of the opening crawl for A New Hope. Okay.
Okay.
It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil Galactic Empire. During the battle, rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, an armored space, blah, blah, blah. It says it right there in the opening crawl. But you're right that we just have this perception that that it's an ongoing war, right? It's just,
yeah.
And I had the same perception as you. I just, when I watched literally this evening, when I put on episode 4 and that started, I was like, wait, has it always said that?
Yeah. I mean, I think overall we're like, yeah, like this movie works better in context of Andor. I think it's undoubtedly true. I still think this is not a very good movie. I still struggle with this movie a lot, and I'm struggling with it for a lot of the dumb reasons. And I want to acknowledge this in myself, that I just find it ultimately very silly that we have to do this thing where like the weakness in the Death Star was not just an engineering oopsie. It was a coordinated plan by this guy who built this weaknesses intentionally. I just find that kind of dumb to a point where it hurts my enjoyment of the movie.
I feel like it's, first of all, I don't even know that was necessary, because I feel like it could have just been like Galen is telling them how to get the Death Star plans, and then they use those plans to figure out a weakness. It doesn't have to be,
that was the whole thing that I like, the story you write in the back of your head when you look at that opening crawl that you clearly never actually read, is they just like fought a battle. They got some plans to this big thing, and they were like, fuck. And then they looked at the plans and were like, oh shit, actually, our engineers took a look at this and I think there's a thing we can exploit here, actually. Yeah. I like, there is part of me that like wants to build this narrative of like Imperial incompetence, which I think matters. Yeah. And I think that's a through line in Andor as well. Like we didn't, Matt, this is going to be impossible. I'm just realizing that telling people at the beginning of the show, come back later, when we're done talking about Andor, is impossible, because we can't not talk about all these things at the same time.
Yeah. I realized shortly after saying that there were other things I wanted to say about Andor that I didn't say yet. So
yeah. Well, what I was about to say is like, we see at the very end of Andor that Partagaz shoots himself,
right?
And it's because he's listening to this manifesto and essentially like seeing the end of the Empire in it, like the inevitable, assured end of this thing, that this idea that tyranny eventually destroys itself, and the Empire will eventually destroy itself. Like not always, but like the Death Star plan, the Death Star having this difficult to achieve, but ultimately incredibly fatal weakness was always part of that to me. That it's just like, this is the arrogance and incompetence of the Empire. And so like, I don't know, just having like it being some secret spy weakness that I tricked you, I built this in and you didn't know about it. I don't know, it just lessens that for me a little bit.
Yeah, sure. That's not my favorite part of the movie for sure. I think I don't think either of us really like this movie in a vacuum. Historically, it's been pretty low down on my list of Star Wars movies, and
yeah,
I it's actually remarkable how much Andor made me like it more, and it's really all. So we basically said this already, but it's really just like, oh, so now I care about all these characters. So now when they all sacrifice themselves heroically, I'm really broken up about it, instead of just being like, this is a mindless action scene, which is really my reaction to the ending, like every subsequent time.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't care about Cassian Andor dying the first time I saw this movie.
Yeah, I barely knew who that was.
Yeah, it's a totally different experience now. Even just, you know, like we said, even just Melchik. Wait, I said it. I did it again.
You did it again.
Melchi. I keep saying Melchik because of the character, the actor.
It's very confusing for me.
Yeah,
I just want you to know that.
Even Melchi dying, it's like, it's Melchi from prison. It's incredibly powerful that this, you know, him and Endor became friends. K2SO, the consolation prize he got when his, you know, essentially wife left him, is getting blown away. This, you know, so
what about when Bodhi Rook died, the defected pilot?
I cared more about him this time, because I cared more about what was happening in the movie, honestly. Because I wasn't like already checked out, is the truth.
Yeah.
Like you gotta win. You get some level of buy-in, and then I can kind of meet you halfway.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I think this is a very well photographed movie.
Yeah.
Like overall, like there's a lot of talk about this movie because Gareth Edwards. I can't remember the full story of this movie, but I'm pretty sure Tony Gilroy was not originally working on this movie, and he came in to save it, and eventually rewrote so much of it that he got a story credit for the film. But I also think there was like multiple directors working on it, and there were parts of this movie that feel that to me. It feels like a movie that's kind of at war with itself at times. But there's a lot of very good action sequences, a lot of very good visuals. I find, like, as much as I kind of got bored with the fighting on the planet in the third act, like just like seeing like daytime beach combat in Star Wars was pretty cool. I think it stretched on for probably too long for me, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really cool. There's a lot of stuff that's like cool, and I appreciate it as being cool, but it's missing that dramatic connection that you know, just for example, like we all these pilots who fly in and save the day, we know none of them. So
I was about to talk about how good the space battle stuff is, and it's good like visually, but it has there's no emotional stakes to it, because we know none of these people.
And when they die, you're just like, oh no, that guy who I saw like once before in a cockpit view, you know, they're basically all like the random guy in Return of the Jedi who crashes into the bridge of the Superstar Destroyer. Like that's every character in that dogfight, and that's I say a flaw. Like you're supposed to, in a war movie, I think you're supposed to set up the characters who are going to be dying in the war enough that I care when they die.
You need some dogs in that dogfight. You need someone to, and I'm sorry to be the nitpicky asshole again. I hate the fact that they used footage from 1977 in this movie. I just like, there's this weird things we do multiple times throughout this movie where we're like so reverential to the original trilogy in annoying ways. Like I hate when the pig nose guy shows up. Like we just got to do pig nose guy. And then, like this is this obsession with it to the point where we're just going to throw shots that have completely different photography and energy and tone in the movie.
Yeah.
Just because, that's the one from that movie.
Right. I mean, it does make logical sense that he would be here, but it totally takes you out of the movie.
You just become very aware you're watching a movie.
I will say one thing that I minded less this time, and it's for the same reasons that we've been talking about this whole time, is the inclusion of Tarkin.
Oh, I still hated it.
So it's as simple as before, I just didn't care about. I didn't think Krennic was a good villain in context of this movie. I was just like, he's like a bureaucrat. Like he's like the least interesting kind of villain. He's just a bureaucrat. Mm-hmm. He's a power hungry bureaucrat. I don't understand him. I don't know him, and he's having these arguments with Tarkin, and I'm just like, I don't care about any of this, and thus I'm very annoyed that we're exploiting the corpse of this actor basically, with our modern day black magic. And now I care. I was way more invested in those scenes because like Krennic and Tarkin having a rivalry is actually like a delicious idea in the aftermath of like Krennic being a character from Andor who we kind of understand better. And I was like, oh yeah, that's great. Like, because Krennic has always been the top dog in Andor. And now in this movie, you kind of see Krennic getting stepped on by both Tarkin and Vader. And by the way, I also am just annoyed at every moment that Vader is in this movie. But like, now that I care about Krennic, I'm less annoyed. So,
well, once again, like we have to do this thing where we're so reverential to the previous movies. So when Vader shows up in a scene, we have to get James Earl Jones to voice him, of course. But like James Earl Jones is like 40 years older than he was, and his voice sounds like an old ass man because he is. And like I didn't like it. I just did not like it. It didn't need to be in the movie. And we'll talk about the Vader scene at the end of the movie in a bit. I want to save that. I want to get into that right now. I'll get too emotional, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I love Krennic. Krennic was a great character. We didn't talk in Andor about Krennic's interview of Dedra, which I thought was just some of the best stuff in the show. Like just those two characters playing off each other and the energy, and Ben Mendelsohn just, oh my God, he's so good.
Yeah, he's fun.
Someone in Discord mentioned it, and I totally agree. It's like when Krennic puts his finger on the top of her head. It's just this really perfect move. Like I want to know if that was in the script or that's just Ben Mendelsohn is like, I'm going to do this now. It's like, oh shit, that's perfect.
Well, what he does, and then her reaction of like animal terror is perfect.
So yeah, I don't have a problem with Tarkin being a character in this movie. I have a problem with how he looks.
Yeah.
So I've decided that this CG Uncanny Valley stuff is just like cilantro.
Yeah.
You know how like some people think cilantro is delicious and some people think cilantro tastes like soap and it's just like a genetic thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just that where like there's people that look at this stuff and are like, oh, I don't see any problem with that. And then there's people that look at this stuff and they just taste soap. And that like every time I looked at Tarkin, I was just like, this does not look remotely real. It looks so fake. He does like, he sticks out in the scene like a sore thumb. I just couldn't stand it. It was awful for me. And the same with Leia at the very end of the movie. Like I actually don't have a problem with them like cutting to Leia in the final seconds of the movie, but like she looked so fake.
Yeah. I think she looks worse than Tarkin does. And that it, just like the Vader scene, I think it really undercuts what would otherwise be a really nice, clean, emotional high note to end on, or bittersweet note to end on.
Yeah. Okay, I've calmed down a little bit, so let's get me angry again. Let's talk about the Vader scene. Okay. I think one thing we didn't say is like this is a very popular movie, right? Like a lot of people really like this movie, and I'm not here to yuck anyone's yums. Like enjoy the movie. I'm glad you do. It tastes like soap to me. But the thing that drives me the most crazy is how much people love this fucking Darth Vader scene. And I think, we've spent the last 45 minutes or so talking about the existence of Andor and how good Andor was and how much it clued us in on some of these characters made us like certain parts of Rogue One more. I cannot believe it, but Andor made me hate the Vader scene more.
And I agree with you, but yeah, go on.
I just think it feels like, okay, so the thing that bothered me in the first part, like before I even saw Andor, when I first saw this movie, the thing that bothered me at the Vader scene is it's so superfluous and unnecessary. None of our characters are in it, right? Like we spent the entire movie with these characters. They've all already died. They've given their lives and they've won, right? They got the message out. That was the final moment they were able to transmit the plans and they got it out. Yes, we've won. We've done it. And then we go to the scene, which is just like fun, gory action monster sequence.
Yeah.
And it's so off-putting for me coming from the emotionality of these characters. And now with Andor, I feel that even more because I'm like, that's fucking Cassian Andor, man.
Yeah.
You end the movie on Cassian Andor, like giving his life and looking at what is not the sunrise, but is instead a nuclear explosion that's about to kill him. But still, he's looking off into the distance, hopefully knowing he accomplished his mission. Like everything was leading to this moment. His whole life was leading to here. And that is a powerful beat that you ended on, that he has finally this moment of satisfaction where he realizes he's done it. He's done his duty. He was the messenger, as that Jedi told him. He passed the message on, and now he can rest in peace.
Yeah.
And then someone like slams on a guitar and goes, "But first." I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, no, it totally crashes into the poignancy of what otherwise would be a fantastic way to end the movie. And apparently it wasn't originally in the movie. It was like a special effects person, thought it would be a cool idea, and then they, tried it out, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we got to have Vader use the lightsaber because that's what people want."
Here's the thing about Vader: he's more scary when he just stands there and doesn't do anything.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and this is actually me just being a bit of like a nerd, I guess, but like, I feel like it diminishes Vader to have him be blocking blaster bolts with his lightsaber.
Yeah,
because you're kind of on some level like he's above that level. Like, I mean, for the same reason that I felt, one of the things that I don't like about the prequels, which I think people who grew up with the prequels will just find bizarre, is like the idea of Yoda and the Emperor having a lightsaber fight just enormously diminishes both of those characters.
Yes,
because your understanding of those characters from the original trilogy is that they're like so off the scale powerful that you don't even know what a fight with them between them would look like if it were to happen. But it wouldn't involve lightsabers. It would just be something. It would be wizardry and subtlety and just like raw power. Yeah. And instead it turns out like, no, pretty much everybody they have the following powers. They have lightsaber block, they have force push, and they have force choke. And if you're evil, you have force lightning.
Yeah.
And those are the powers. The end. That's what a Jedi is.
Yep. Yeah. It sucks.
It does suck. I one of the things I appreciated about this movie even was that you sort of have like a force sensitive guy who is not a Jedi but is sort of doing cool force stuff. And I admit, like I like 20% rolled my eyes at it. It's funny, I like misremembered how the scene goes because in my mind, the first time that the blind guy like kicks all the stormtroopers' asses, my memory was that he like just beat them all up with his staff. And I was like, that's so stupid, they're wearing armor. And what actually happens is it's more like just due to his, force being one with the force, he's just like fighting them. And as he's moving around, they're just shooting each other because he's weaving in and out between them. Mm-hmm. And yes, he does whack a few of them with the staff, and that is kind of stupid. But it was basically on the right side of the line where I could tolerate it.
Sure.
But just like having Darth Vader show up with the lightsaber and butcher some people, I'm just like, why are we doing that?
It's so unnecessary. It's just for fan service. We had some listeners say like, I've always treated it as it's kind of like the post-credit sequence of the movie. And I'm like, but it's literally not though. Like it's the second to last beat we end the movie on. And I just like, it's one of those things where I try not to be this person, but the fact that so many people like it makes me dislike it more, because I just want to be like, you're doing Star Wars wrong.
Yeah.
Which is an entirely unfair thing to think, but I can't help it. I really can't help it.
Well, I think like you look at Andor and you've got to think that there were people in meetings at some point who were like, yeah, and maybe we could have like a Jedi in the scene, and Tony Gilroy being like, no, we're not
having any fucking lightsabers in this show.
Yeah.
And they never did. They never did.
I like to imagine that like just outside of the ship where Luthen is having his meltdown, Order 66 is taking place. But like we don't get to see any of it.
Yeah.
That's why I hope that's the case. Because that's the Jedi thing. The Jedi thing works great in the original trilogy where it's all like wizards, and it's just that it's an adventure tone. It's a story of knights. You know, I noticed something watching A New Hope this evening that I never noticed before, is that 3PO keeps calling Luke sir, and Luke says, "You don't have to call me sir. Luke is fine." And 3PO says, "Oh, of course, Sir Luke." And then Luke just kind of like laughs. And that was literally the first time I thought about that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Sir Luke, like a knight."
Yeah.
He that's what this story is, and that's intentional. I like as soon as that clicked for me, I was like, George Lucas is a genius. I just discovered
just figuring that out.
Just figured out that George Lucas is a genius.
May 2025, we finally cued in on it. Yeah. I mean, like I actually do like the Jedi stuff in this movie, and I think I was kind of negative on it the first time we talked about this movie, but I do like it more now. I think it feels of a piece to me with how the Force was depicted in Andor. Because I mean, like we're not like it's essentially just religion in this movie. Until Vader takes out his sword and starts blocking laser bolts with his hand, but like. Like I love it as this in the context of both Andor and this movie, of just like this ancient religion that like everyone who practiced it was horribly murdered. And the galaxy is kind of reeling at what we do with that now and what it means. And like you just like overall faith in the Force in the galaxy is at an all-time low. And yet you still have these people that for whatever reason feel drawn to it. Like I love the woman in Andor who's just like, I don't even really understand what this thing is. I just have these feelings and I can do these things and I don't really understand it at all. And a lot of times I don't particularly like it. But like it's part of me. And then with Rogue One, we have these two characters, both of which were defenders of this temple and believers, and one of them has lost his belief and the other never stopped losing his belief. And so their little mini arc is he kind of refines his faith and then dies horribly. But I like it as that. I think it functions as that. And like it's the weirdest thing because we just feel like we have to have this stuff always. But it functions in the movies, in the context of the movies were, which, as you said, is an adventure story with old knights. The idea that it's essentially like Camelot has fallen, right? And these are the Knights of the Round Table, and they're still trying to find a world in which they have a place still. And I like it as that, and I don't like it as the video game it has become.
I'm just on the same page as you here, and I think there's just this really interesting thing that I observe. I think we've maybe talked about before, just the fact that like when you were born really dictates a lot about how you're going to feel about Star Wars. And
sure,
I just, it's almost pointless to like, you can't have an argument with someone and be like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're just younger than me. And so for you, this is what you were exposed to in this order, and this is how you see this thing. But I think maybe to take things full circle, it's like you and I were just really pretty overall down on modern Star Wars. Like there was very little that I enjoyed about it. It was I almost entirely indulged in Star Wars prior to Andor due to like self-consciously just nostalgia. It's like this makes me feel happy because it reminds me of childhood. That's literally why I'm doing this. It's not because I expect it to be good. I watched the whole Obi-Wan show because I'm an idiot, right? It's like like there's no reason to watch that whole show. It's not a good show. You're just like, but it's Obi-Wan, so it's Obi-Wan, so I'm gonna watch.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the Ahsoka show. We were talking about that the other day, and I realized that yes, I indeed watched that entire show because I wanted so desperately to like it.
Yeah,
and that's my relationship with Star Wars. Is I desperately want to love all of it.
Yeah,
and I just don't.
And I desperately want them to do a good job, and repeatedly, they didn't, and it seemed like they never would again. And it just seemed like, I think maybe there was some point even when I was like, I'm mentally divorcing from this. And for me, Star Wars was a phenomenon that ended, in the late 80s, and then everything since then has been fan fiction. And now I find myself in the position of saying, well, I certainly accept Andor into whatever my conception of Star Wars is. So the idea of a canon is just so weird. And I have such an interesting love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah.
Because I think we all kind of have our own personal canon. And but I don't even know what my point is. I guess it's just like this has rejuvenated my ability to think that maybe Star Wars is a living thing and not a dead thing that was in the past.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, like, I think there are different kinds of people, right? There are people like, the thing I loved about Star Wars is that like I filled in the edges of it with my own imagination. And there's people, and I think you read the expanded universe stuff way more than I did. Like there's people that love this stuff so much and they want to know every single solitary corner of it. And so like they get into things like Rogue One, which is whether it's stupid conceptually or not, whether you agree with that sentiment or not, it's like, this is a corner that was not filled and now we can know this corner. And it's like, we'll eat up every opportunity to seek out every drop and bit of information about this world because they love it so much. I've never been that person. Like it's always been for me, I liked the movies. I thought they were good. And I liked some of the video games because they were fun games. Like I never really read the books. Like that one book we read for book club was like the first expanded universe book I've ever read.
Yeah.
And last, by the way. And then like it's just that's my relationship with the property. And so like I look at something like Rogue One and I'm like, did I care about this? And I look at something like Andor and I'm just like, I can't believe this existed and was as good as it was, and I care about it as much as it was. And like there's part of me that wonders, I don't know what you think about this. Like I don't know if a thing like this will ever be made again. Like I get your positivity around Star Wars has been reinvigorated because of this, and I'm there with you. But this feels to me like a one-off phenomenon that will never be repeated ever.
Well, so my thought here is simply it would actually be a mistake for them to say, we're in the Disney boardroom and they say, okay, everyone loved Andor, and through word of mouth, it became really popular, so people watched it.
Well, I don't know if that last part is true, by the way.
It may not be. For the sake of this thought experiment, let's pretend it is. And then the executive says, so that means we need a bunch more shit like Andor, exactly like Andor.
Yeah.
And we're going to put that in the copier, and we're going to make a copy of a copy of a copy until it's all grainy and faded out. And we've lost everything about it that made it good. Or just maybe it's still good, but it's not unique. It's like you're just trying to run it back. You're just trying to do it again. And that's not what I want either. What I want is simply like artistic vision that has a point and knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
And has characters. Like I don't even need it to be a gritty tactical realism politics thing where we have ISB meetings. I love that, but I don't need that to be in everything.
Yeah.
So just do something earnest.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think what this ultimately says to me is that kind of stuff can exist in IP. Like there's always a part of me that's going to look like the Penguin show on HBO Max and be like, did we have to put Colin Farrell in fucking penguin makeup to tell like a gritty gangster crime story? Did we have to do that? Couldn't we just have made a gritty gangster crime story? And like, there's a part of me that's always going to be like that, but the part of me that enjoyed Andor so much is like, oh yeah, like being in IP doesn't necessarily mean that something is going to lack creativity or lack purpose or lack drive. Like that something like this can exist within the machine that is Star Wars. Gives me hope.
Yeah.
And we all know rebellions are built on hope.
Excellent, Scott. I
kind of wanted to keep talking, but I just feel like we have to end it now.
I think so. I mean, there was like the one last bit about Andor I wanted to talk about, which is like a hyper ultra spoiler. So, you know, if you don't want to be spoiled on Andor,
yeah. If you're apologies to everyone desperately attempting to navigate this episode.
Yeah, I don't know. We've made a mistake.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I can even say it vaguely and people will know what I'm talking about if they've seen the show, which is just like the show had me on the edge as we're showing kind of how all the characters end up, and Andor's getting on his ship. And, you know, we see Dedra in her cell, and we see the little droid playing on the farming planet, and pushed me over the edge with that last bit there, Scott. Pushed me right over the edge.
You mean with Bix holding little Cassian?
Yes. Because you're like, this is who the sunrise is for, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's what you do it for, but it's also heartbreaking that like he was so close. He was so close to getting that simple, settle down life, but there are some people in this world that is not what life has in store for them, and that is not what life demands of them. And life demanded from Cassian Andor that he give that life to pass a message. And so we did.
I love that. There's one moment earlier in the season which I love it as a moment simply because of what it says about the two characters, where Luthen is being extremely fatalistic and saying to Andor, you know, since the day we met, I can't do it. Since the day you and I met, you know, we both known that we were both going to be hanged, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Cassian goes like very emphatically, "Speak for yourself." and I love that because it shows both Luthen's fatalism and also Cassian's not accepting that, oh, you know, this is a hopeless fight. We're all going to die before we see the end of it. Cassian never accepted that. So that makes his death all the more tragic, that he would have kept fighting. But he couldn't because he didn't survive.
Rest in peace, Cassian Andor.
Yep.
God, what a show. Never will be another one like it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's going to have a special place in my heart forever.
Yep. If you haven't watched it yet, I strongly recommend you do so. But also, sorry for spoiling it there at the end.
Yeah, and all throughout.
Yeah. It was actually a stupid goal of us to think we could have again, conceptually, our idea was stupid. Because the point was revisiting Rogue One after we had seen Andor and reviewing it in the context of Andor. So how could we talk about Rogue One without talking about Andor?
Yeah. If only we hadn't said anything about not talking about Andor. Oh well.
Yeah, if only we could go back and edit that beginning of the podcast. But alas, we cannot. I'm going to put it in the show notes and make sure people understand.
Okay.
I mean, I will say, like, Maybe I just won't put a timestamp to skip to the Rogue One stuff so no one accidentally does anything.
Yeah. You can just title it like Andor and Rogue One. And
I think that's what we're going to do. Yeah. All right. Well, that was Tony Gilroy's Andor and a revisit to Rogue One, which is a decent movie with some bad Vader stuff in it.
A decent movie that, for the first time in history, was actually improved by having a prequel.
Yeah. Wow. Well said.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's all we had for you this week. If you have any opinions on Andor or Rogue One or anything else, feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia.com, over on our Twitter account at doofmedia, our Instagram account at doofmedia, and our subreddit, reddit.com/r/doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms and YouTube and everything.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and join us at any of the available levels. We are continuing our show on From in the coming weeks. We're going to be jumping into season 2, and that is available only to patrons. And there's a ton of backlog of bonus content that's available for you as well. So check that out, patreon.com/doofmedia.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Each review does help us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, next week, for real this time, for real, we begin Destructing PTA with his first film, Hard 8. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I mean, good episode, but...
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.